The night the king stopped breathing, on June 25, 2009, the world did not just lose a superstar. It lost the chance to understand how fame can quietly kill. Get on the morning of June 25, 2009, the world was waiting. In London, 50 sold-out concerts stood ready under the name This Is It. In Los Angeles, rehearsals had stretched late into the night, filled with lights, choreography, and the unmistakable sound of a voice that once defined an era. For the first time in more than a decade, Michael Jackson was preparing to return to the stage. He was 50 years old. To the public, this was a comeback. To the industry, it was an event. To his children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, it was the moment their father would once again become who the world believed him to be. But behind closed doors, the picture was far less triumphant. Michael Jackson's body was failing him. Years of injuries, surgeries, and relentless pressure had turned daily life into a negotiation with pain. Sleep was no longer natural. Rest was no longer guaranteed. Every rehearsal demanded chemical assistance just to function, just to endure the hours of movement and sound. That night, June 24th, slipping quietly into June 25th, Michael was at home in Los Angeles. The house was silent. Rehearsals were over. Another exhausting day had ended. As he had so many nights before, he was searching for sleep. Not peace, not dreams, just unconsciousness. The man who once commanded stadiums of screaming fans now required medical intervention to close his eyes. According to official records, his personal physician was present. Medications were administered. The goal was simple: rest before another demanding day. But something went wrong. At approximately midday on June 25th, emergency services received a call from Michael Jackson's residence. Paramedics arrived to find the most famous entertainer on the planet unresponsive. Efforts to revive him continued as he was transported to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. They failed. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Jackson was pronounced dead. Within minutes, the news spread across continents. Television networks interrupted programming. Social media froze under the weight of disbelief. Fans gathered in streets, outside hospitals, in public squares, clinging to a hope that this was another cruel rumor. It was not. The official cause of death would later be recorded as cardiac arrest resulting from acute drug intoxication. 2 substances were named: Propofol and benzodiazepines. A clinical explanation. A sterile conclusion. But official causes rarely tell the full story. They do not explain how a global icon reached a point where surgical anesthetics became nightly sleep aids. They do not explain why a man preparing for the most ambitious comeback of his career was medically fragile beyond recognition. They do not answer the question that continues to echo years later. Could Michael Jackson have been saved? To understand what happened that night, we cannot start in that bedroom. We must go back decades. Back to the injuries that never healed. The pressure that never stopped. The system that continued to demand performance long after the body had begun to collapse. Because what ended on June 25th did not begin that night. It began the moment pain became part of the price of being a king. But what if the real tragedy did not begin that night, but years earlier? Long before the final night in Los Angeles, Michael Jackson's body had already begun to fail him. The decline did not happen suddenly. It unfolded slowly, injury by injury, decision by decision, under the relentless pressure of fame that never allowed recovery to be complete. The first rupture came in January 1984. During the filming of a Pepsi commercial, a technical malfunction caused pyrotechnics to ignite too early. Flames erupted near Michael's head. His hair caught fire instantly. The footage would later be replayed endlessly, but the real damage occurred after the cameras stopped rolling. Michael suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns to his scalp and parts of his upper body. The pain was severe. The healing was incomplete. According to medical records and close associates, this incident marked the beginning of his long relationship with prescription pain medication. What began as legitimate treatment for injury gradually became a method of survival. Nerve pain persisted. Headaches followed. Sensitivity increased. And with each new procedure, another layer of physical resilience disappeared. Pain did not leave him. It adapted. In the years that followed, Michael underwent multiple surgeries. Some were reconstructive, others cosmetic. Each carried risks. Each required anesthesia. Each recovery introduced new medications into his routine. The line between treatment and dependency became increasingly difficult to define. Then in 1999, another accident altered everything. During a live performance involving aerial equipment, a mechanical malfunction caused Michael to fall from a height estimated at approximately 15 meters. The impact was devastating. He collapsed on stage and was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was severe spinal trauma. From that moment on, chronic back pain became a permanent fixture in his life. Those close to him described a man who could no longer stand or rehearse for extended periods without assistance. Doctors prescribed increasingly potent painkillers. The medications dulled the pain, but they also dulled awareness. Over time, tolerance increased. Dosages followed. The injuries did not heal. They accumulated. As the years passed, a new enemy emerged. Insomnia. Sleep, once natural and restorative, became elusive. Michael reportedly went days without rest. 2 nights turned into 3. 3 into 4. At times, he remained awake for nearly a week. His mind raced. His body weakened. Hallucinations were reported. Anxiety intensified. For someone whose career depended on precision, memory, and physical control, this was catastrophic. Traditional sleep medications failed. Sedatives lost their effect. According to individuals within his inner circle, Michael became desperate. He was not seeking euphoria. He was seeking silence, a temporary shutdown, something strong enough to force his body into rest. That was when Propofol entered his life. Propofol is not a sleep aid. It is a powerful intravenous anesthetic typically used in surgical settings under strict medical supervision. It requires monitoring equipment, oxygen support, and trained personnel. Outside of an operating room, its use carries extreme risk. Michael referred to it as milk, a reference to its white appearance. To him, it represented something simple, clean, effective. To medical professionals, it represented danger. Yet it worked. For the first time in years, he could sleep. But the cost was profound. Propofol does not induce natural sleep. It suppresses consciousness. It slows breathing. It depresses the nervous system. Without monitoring, it can stop respiration entirely. By the end of the 1990s, Michael's reliance on chemical solutions had become routine. Painkillers for his body, sedatives for his mind, anesthetic agents for rest. Each night required careful orchestration. Each morning began with recovery. Despite this, the world continued to expect brilliance. In early 2009, Michael signed a contract with AEG Live for a series of concerts in London titled This Is It. The announcement was met with global excitement. 50 performances, millions of dollars, a historic return. Behind the scenes, the reality was darker. Michael had not performed at this scale in over 10 years. His stamina was diminished. His health was unstable. Rehearsals began in late April at the Staples Center in Los Angeles and quickly became grueling. 5 to 6 days a week. Long hours. Intense choreography. Vocal strain. According to those present, Michael struggled to keep up. He needed medication to stand, medication to focus, medication to sleep. Without rest, rehearsals became impossible. Without rehearsals, the contract collapsed. Sleep was no longer optional. It was a requirement. As pressure mounted, the need for a physician willing to support his nightly regimen became critical. Not a hospital doctor. Not a specialist bound by institutional rules. Someone private. Someone compliant. That need would soon be fulfilled. By the time June approached, Michael's nights followed a ritual. Return home. Administer medications. Enter unconsciousness. Wake. Repeat. The body endured what it could. The mind followed. To the public, Michael Jackson was preparing for a triumphant return. In reality, he was negotiating with a body that had never fully healed. And rest, the most basic human necessity, had become a medical procedure. Sleep was no longer rest. It was chemical unconsciousness. By early 2009, Michael Jackson no longer needed encouragement to rest. He needed permission. Permission from contracts, schedules, and an industry that had already sold his return before confirming his survival. The agreement with AEG Live promised 50 performances in London. It also promised financial relief. Years of legal battles, mounting expenses, and a lifestyle that never truly slowed had left Michael under immense pressure. The concerts were framed as a comeback. Privately, they functioned as a deadline. Rehearsals began in late April at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. They were intense. Long hours, demanding choreography, precision expected from a body that could no longer guarantee it. Those present described a man alternating between moments of brilliance and visible exhaustion. Some nights he could not complete full run-throughs. Other nights he surprised everyone. What remained constant was the need for sleep. Traditional methods no longer worked. Oral sedatives failed. Increasing dosages brought diminishing returns. Anxiety worsened. Pain resurfaced. Without rest, rehearsals became dangerous. Without rehearsals, the production faced collapse. It was during this period that Dr. Conrad Murray became indispensable. Murray was a cardiologist, not an anesthesiologist. He had known Michael Jackson previously and was familiar with his unusual medical requests. According to testimony, Murray was hired under the contract as a personal physician. His role extended beyond medical advice. He became a nightly presence, a facilitator. Propofol returned. Administered intravenously in a private residence, Propofol required conditions that were not present. No continuous monitoring. No oxygen supply. No resuscitation equipment. No trained support staff. What existed instead was trust, urgency, and routine. Almost every night after rehearsals, Michael returned home to his residence on North Carrollwood Drive. The house was quiet. Curtains drawn. Preparations made. Murray administered medications intended to induce unconsciousness. The goal was sleep. The method was anesthesia. This arrangement violated basic medical standards. Propofol depresses respiration. It can cause sudden respiratory arrest without warning. In hospital settings, patients are monitored constantly. Oxygen saturation, heart rate, breathing. At home, none of this existed, yet the routine continued. On the night of June 24th, rehearsals had ended late. Michael was exhausted. According to statements, he complained of fatigue and anxiety. Murray prepared the medications as he had before. A combination of sedatives, followed by propofol administered intravenously. Shortly after the injection, Michael appeared to fall asleep. Then Murray left the room. The reasons would later vary. A phone call. A brief absence. A moment of inattention. Regardless of the explanation, those minutes mattered. When Murray returned, Michael was not breathing. What occurred next would become the center of the investigation. Medical experts testified that Michael experienced respiratory arrest, not immediate cardiac arrest. In such cases, prompt oxygenation can restore breathing. Time is critical. Seconds matter. Murray did not provide oxygen. Instead, he attempted resuscitation methods inappropriate for the situation. He reportedly confused respiratory arrest with cardiac arrest. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation was performed on a soft bed surface, reducing effectiveness. No emergency equipment was available. No emergency services were contacted immediately. Precious minutes passed. When emergency responders finally arrived, they found Michael unresponsive. Attempts to revive him continued during transport to the hospital. At Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, physicians fought to stabilize him. They failed. Michael Jackson was pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. The autopsy would later confirm acute propofol intoxication as the primary cause of death, with benzodiazepines listed as contributing factors. The conclusion was clear. This was not a natural death. It was a medical tragedy. Attention turned immediately to Murray. Investigators questioned why propofol was administered outside a medical setting. Why no monitoring equipment was present? Why Murray left the patient unattended? Why emergency services were not contacted immediately? Murray maintained that he acted at Michael's request, that he administered only minimal doses, that Michael himself connected the intravenous line. The court did not accept this explanation. In 2011, Murray stood trial for involuntary manslaughter. Prosecutors presented evidence of repeated violations of medical protocol. Witnesses testified that Murray prioritized personal matters over patient monitoring. Experts explained that Michael's death was predictable under the circumstances. The jury reached a verdict quickly. Guilty. Murray was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He served approximately 2 years before being released early due to sentence reductions. His medical license was revoked. His reputation destroyed. Yet for many, the verdict felt incomplete. Murray was held responsible. The system that enabled the situation was not. No charges were brought against the production company. No investigation extended into contractual pressures. No broader accountability followed. The doctor went to prison. The machine continued. Years later, debates persist. Was Murray a reckless physician who ignored basic safety? Or was he a hired solution to an impossible demand? A man placed between a fragile patient and an unforgiving industry? What remains undeniable is this. Michael Jackson's death was not instantaneous. It unfolded over minutes. Minutes during which intervention could have changed the outcome. Medical experts testified that with immediate oxygen support, survival was possible. The difference between life and death was not fame, not legacy, not talent. It was response time. If oxygen had arrived in time, this story might have ended differently. When the trial ended and the sentence was delivered, the world was offered something that resembled closure. A guilty verdict. A prison term. A name held responsible. On paper, justice appeared to have been served. In reality, it was only a partial truth. Dr. Conrad Murray went to prison, but the circumstances that made his presence necessary remained largely untouched. The contracts were never re-examined in court. The schedules were never questioned under oath. The expectations placed on a declining body were never put on trial. Michael Jackson's death was reduced to a single man's negligence, as if one doctor alone had the power to decide the fate of a global industry. But no physician creates pressure in isolation. By the final months of his life, Michael Jackson existed inside a system that no longer distinguished between the man and the product. The concerts were sold. The tickets were printed. The profits were projected. His physical condition became an obstacle to be managed, not a warning to be respected. Those close to him described a conflicted figure. On one hand, an artist who still wanted to give something back to his audience. On the other, a man exhausted beyond repair, unable to meet the demands placed upon him without chemical assistance. He was neither entirely forced nor entirely free. He was trapped in between. Some argue that Michael signed the contract willingly, aware of the risks. Others believe financial pressure and debt left him with no real alternative. Both interpretations may be true at the same time. Human decisions are rarely clean when survival is involved. What is certain is this. Michael Jackson was rehearsing for the future while his body was failing in the present. Every night required medical intervention. Every morning began with recovery from the night before. The margin for error grew thinner with each passing day. When that margin finally collapsed, the response was not fast enough. His death became a lesson in delayed accountability. Not only about medicine, but about fame itself. About how success can outpace care. About how an industry can continue moving forward even when the person at its center is breaking down. Michael Jackson was not weak. He was worn down. Behind the performances, the awards, and the mythology, there was a man who lived with constant pain, profound loneliness, and relentless expectation. His talent reshaped music, culture, and performance forever. His humanity struggled to survive under the weight of that achievement. The world remembers the icon, the moonwalk, the voice, the spectacle. But history must also remember the cost. Because Michael Jackson did not die in a vacuum. He died at the intersection of medicine, money, and myth. A place where responsibility is easily diluted and accountability arrives too late. If there is a truth hidden inside this story, it is not found in toxicology reports or verdicts. It is found in the question that still lingers years later. How many warnings does the system ignore before tragedy becomes inevitable? Michael Jackson's legacy will remain immortal. His music will continue to move generations yet to come. But his final chapter stands as a reminder that even kings require rest. Even legends need protection. And when they are denied both, the fall is not sudden. It is prepared. Michael Jackson did not die because he was weak. He died because the world would not let a legend rest. Before we leave this story, remember this. The death of Michael Jackson was not just the end of a life. It was a mirror held up to an industry that profits from brilliance but rarely protects those who create it. If you want to continue exploring the hidden cost of fame, power, and silence, stay with this channel. These are not stories meant to entertain. They are stories meant to be understood. The next case reveals how a fortune of $600 million vanished, not overnight, but through years of denial, pressure, and collapse. You will see it appear on your screen now. Thank you for watching. And remember, legends do not fall suddenly. They're worn down quietly.